You're not here to learn tricks to impress women. You're here because something inside you is tired of tolerating what you know deep down isn't right. Not because you're weak, not because you're unsure of your worth, but because no one ever showed you where a man should draw the line. Society has convinced you that the more you endure, the more you deserve love, that if you're endlessly patient, overly forgiving, and always selfless, you'll finally be worthy. But that's a lie dressed as a virtue. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But what about when something feels wrong and you stay silent? Too much patience isn't strength, it's self-betrayal, quietly poisoning your boundaries, one drop at a time. So today, we shift everything. You're not here to become more likable. You're here to stop betraying yourself. This is about learning to recognize the subtle, almost invisible behaviors that steal your peace, your power, and your clarity, not through outbursts, not through ego, but through stillness, the kind only a grounded man understands. Because here's the hard truth. A man who accepts everything will eventually be left with nothing. That's not just philosophy. It's the pattern repeating in men's lives every day. So, we're going to break that pattern starting now. I'm going to walk you through 8 behaviors no man should ever allow. Not because you're angry, not because you're proud, but because you finally understand what self-respect looks like. And if you think 1 or 2 of them don't apply to you, stay. Because even one blind spot can unravel your strength. Even one quiet compromise can turn you into someone you don't even recognize anymore. Let's begin. 1. Hidden disrespect, masked as humor. Disrespect rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, wearing a smile, a joke, a harmless tease, so it seems. You're on a date. She laughs and says, "You're shorter than I thought." Still cute. Though, and just like that, a line is crossed. Most men laugh with her. They think ignoring it proves confidence, but it doesn't. It teaches her something else, that your boundaries are open for negotiation. True power isn't loud. It doesn't snap. It doesn't overreact. It notices. In that moment, you're not dealing with humor. You're dealing with a test. And every time you let it slide, you're not being cool. You're being conditioned. You become a man who makes room for small cuts. Until one day, you don't recognize the version of yourself who once stood tall. So what do? You stay calm. You don't joke back. You don't explain. You look her in the eye and say, "I don't make light of respect." Then move on. No drama, no anger, just clarity. That's how you lead. Not by dominating, but by defining the ground you stand on. A man who respects himself doesn't need to seek approval. He lives in a way that demands it, without saying a word. 2. Guilt as a weapon of control. Guilt rarely looks like control. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Not, "Do as I say," but "How could you?" You speak your truth. You express a need, and suddenly, the energy shifts. She says, "You're overreacting. I didn't think you were this sensitive." Now the problem isn't what she did. It's how you felt about it. You're no longer addressing her behavior. You're defending your emotions. And that's the trap. True manipulation doesn't fight you directly. It confuses your inner compass, makes you believe that choosing yourself is selfish. But here's the truth. You never need to apologize for honoring your time, your peace, or your standards. When you feel that shift, pause. Don't argue. Don't explain. Look her in the eye and say, "Respecting my time isn't something I feel guilty about." Then, stop talking. Let the silence speak for you. Because if guilt is her tool, what she wants isn't connection, it's control. And the man who falls for this pattern slowly gives himself away, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but resentment. A man rooted in clarity doesn't fear guilt. He recognizes it, and he refuses to carry what isn't his. 3. When silence becomes a weapon, silence can be a sanctuary, but when misused, it becomes a chain. She doesn't yell. She doesn't argue. She just vanishes. She ignores your messages, withdraws her warmth, pretends nothing happened, and lets the distance speak louder than any words. You ask a simple question, she says nothing, and now it's you who waits, you who overthinks, you who breaks first. This isn't resolution, it's manipulation. She isn't being quiet to reflect, she's quiet to punish, because silence, when used to avoid accountability, isn't calm, it's control. So what's the move? You don't chase, you don't plead, you speak once, with calm precision, then you step back, not in anger, but in strength. You return your energy to yourself, to your work, to your mission. Let her wander, let her sit with the weight of your absence, because a man who isn't afraid of silence becomes impossible to control. He isn't led by guilt, fear, or the need for approval. He's led by principle, and that kind of man, he can't be leashed. 4. Quiet disrespect is still disrespect. Most women won't challenge your strength directly. They test it quietly, not with confrontation, but with small, dismissive acts. She shows up late, doesn't apologize, cuts you off mid-sentence, breaks a plan with no explanation. Not once, not loud, but intentional. Picture it. You're on a first date. She arrives 30 minutes late. No message, no excuse. Most men shrug it off. No big deal. But it is. Because every time you tolerate disrespect, you teach her where your standards end. And if there's no boundary, there's no respect. This isn't about being feared. It's about being firm. So, how do you respond? Not with lectures, not with ego. You stay calm. You say, "Understood," and you move on. No anger, no overreaction, just presence. If it happens again, you don't argue. You withdraw. Time is your currency, and a man who values his time doesn't give it to someone who takes it lightly. Scarcity earns respect, because when you stop showing up for someone who disrespects your presence, you remind them your attention is earned, not owed. 5. When affection becomes a disguise, one of the most deceptive forms of manipulation is the emotional high, followed by quiet punishment. She overwhelms you with affection when you're agreeable, kindness, closeness, intensity, as long as you stay in line. But the moment you speak up, the energy shifts. You express a concern, and suddenly she becomes distant, cold, silent. And yet, when you fall back into agreement, her warmth returns, as if nothing happened. This isn't love, it's conditioning. Conditioning you to connect approval with obedience, to fear your own voice, to chase her validation instead of honoring your truth. Pay attention, not just to how she loves, but when. If affection only shows up when you comply, it's not connection, it's a contract. Here's how you reclaim your clarity. Don't get lost in moments. Track the pattern. Step back from the intensity. Ask yourself, is this consistency or control? Because real love doesn't vanish when you disagree. It listens, it adjusts, it holds space. A man grounded in standards doesn't follow emotion. He leads with principle. Stay firm, stay calm, and most of all, stay loyal to your inner compass. 6. When she makes you doubt what you know. Gaslighting doesn't always sound cruel. Sometimes it sounds concerned. You're overthinking. You're too emotional. You're imagining things. It doesn't confront you head-on. It slides beneath your defenses and makes you question the one thing you should trust: your intuition. You bring up something real, something that doesn't sit right, like her messaging someone from her past. She doesn't address it. She flips it. Suddenly, the spotlight is on your insecurities, not her behavior. Now you're not seeking truth. You're defending your sanity. This is not misunderstanding. It's misdirection. Gaslighting doesn't silence you. It makes you silence yourself. Because when a woman can distort how you see reality, she no longer needs to control your choices. You'll do it for her. Here's how you break the pattern. Don't argue over how you feel. You don't need permission to trust your gut. Stay grounded in facts. Set your boundary. State it clearly, calmly, and then stand still. You don't need to yell. You don't need to justify. A man anchored in truth cannot be swayed by emotional fog. Let your clarity speak louder than any explanation. 7. When masculinity becomes a target. In today's world, masculinity isn't attacked loudly. It's chipped away quietly. You're too intense. Why can't you be softer? Strong men are dangerous. They say it's about kindness, but it's not. It's about control. You speak with conviction. You're cold, difficult. You take the lead. You're accused of being controlling. You show ambition. Suddenly, you're the problem. But this isn't about moral balance. It's about making you doubt what's natural, so you're easier to shape. Here's the truth. Your drive, your clarity, your assertiveness, they aren't flaws. They're not outdated. They're not toxic. They're part of who you are. You don't need to apologize for being decisive. You don't need to dilute your strength to make others feel safe. A man rooted in his essence doesn't ask for approval. He moves with calm direction, not to dominate, but to lead by presence. So stop explaining your masculinity. Live it, because a man who respects his nature commands respect without ever needing to raise his voice. 8. When she punishes you for having a life beyond her. Real love doesn't fear your individuality. It welcomes it. Because in a strong relationship, a man's purpose isn't a threat, it's a foundation. But not all women see it that way. Some don't want to build with you. They want to be the center of your world. And when they're not, they punish you. Not with arguments or yelling, but with silence, withdrawal, guilt trips, and emotional sabotage. You make time for your work. You protect your schedule. You miss a dinner to prepare for something meaningful. Suddenly, she pulls away. She won't say it directly, but she'll make you feel like you've done something wrong, that pursuing your dream means you're failing her. But here's the truth. This isn't about romance. It's about power. She's not reacting to your priorities. She's reacting to losing control over them. And if you give in, if you start adjusting your life to avoid her cold responses, you send a message that your mission is flexible, that your identity bends when pushed. And that's when the real damage begins. Because the man who sacrifices his direction for temporary peace in a relationship doesn't gain harmony. He loses himself. He starts to move with fear instead of focus. He second guesses his steps. And slowly, he becomes a version of himself that even he doesn't recognize. So what's the way out? It starts with a boundary. You don't need to yell. You don't need to fight. You simply say, "My purpose matters." You're invited to walk beside me, but never instead of it. That clarity is your strength. It may not please her in the moment, but it will reveal who she really is. A woman who respects your path will support it. A woman who fears your strength will try to weaken it. So let her response be your compass, not to chase, not to argue, but to observe, because some women don't need confrontation. They just need clarity. They need to see that you're not a boy looking for approval. You're a man with direction. And when she sees you standing firm, when she realizes your life doesn't shrink to make room for her mood swings, that's when real respect begins. Ironically, it's not the man who yields, who wins her admiration. It's the man who doesn't flinch every time you stay silent, every time you let it go to keep the peace. You're not being strong. You're being conditioned to believe that tolerance is virtue, that avoidance is wisdom, that silence equals strength. But what you're actually doing is handing over your power, inch by inch. A woman doesn't destroy your sovereignty with one loud argument. She dismantles it slowly, through small tests, through minor disrespect, through emotional guilt you quietly accept. You think you're keeping harmony, but you're building resentment, not just toward her, but toward yourself, because deep down, you know the cost. And it's not just your voice, it's your spine. Power, in its truest form, is rarely stolen. It's surrendered through hesitation, through soft compromises, through choosing peace over principle. She's not always trying to break you. Often, she's just trying to find the edge, where your no lives, where your clarity begins. She wants to see if you'll fold, or if you'll stand. And here's the truth. Most men never hear. She doesn't respect what you allow. She respects what you protect. A man without boundaries becomes a man without weight. Easy to move, easy to shape, easy to forget. But a man who knows who he is, who draws the line once, with calm certainty, he becomes immovable, not because he's cold, but because he's aligned. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your surrender. The next time you feel that pull to avoid discomfort, remember this. You are not here to be pleasing. You are here to be clear. So draw your lines, not with rage, but with stillness, not to punish, but to preserve. And when that line is crossed, you don't need to explain. You don't need to defend. You simply step back and walk away, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, because a man who walks away without noise is often the man she never forgets. He doesn't lose his crown in war. He loses it when he forgets he's a king. So wear it, not loudly, but faithfully, because sovereignty isn't something you announce, it's something you embody. And when you do, you stop being easy to manipulate. You stop being easy to shape. You become a man who commands respect, not by asking for it, but by living in a way that makes it non-negotiable. In the end, she won't respond to what you say, but to what you live. If you allow disrespect, you'll receive more of it. If you stand firm in quiet conviction, she will either rise to meet you or quietly exit. And either outcome is a win, because a man doesn't lose when someone walks away. He loses when he bends his truth to make them stay. Real strength isn't about controlling her. It's about needing nothing from her to remain grounded. You stop needing to be chased, understood, or validated. You lead from within. That's when you enter a different category of man, not louder, but clearer, not tougher, but calmer. You stop proving and start embodying. This is what true sovereignty looks like. Not loud, not performative, but present. And the moment you choose yourself, fully, quietly, unapologetically, you become untouchable. For the few men ready to rise, to let go of emotional chasing, to stop negotiating with their self-worth, your real journey begins now. What I'm building isn't just theory, it's a new framework, one built on timeless truth, tested clarity, and inner weight. So if this spoke to you, leave a word below, something simple, something honest. Let it mark the moment you stopped shrinking. You never know who might read it and wake up because of you. And if you feel called to do more, share this with the man who needs it, because you're not just helping him, you're reminding yourself, I don't fold for love. I stand for respect. We are not here to beg. We are here to build